Good day, this is Group 10, and we are here to present our thesis milestone report on our thesis study entitled Comparative Antagonistic Activity of the Endolychinic Fungi or ELF, isolated from Parmotrema cristiferum and Parmelia perlata, collected from Kapangan Benguet, Northern Philippines. Here is the distribution of our work. I am Sofia Esteban, which is the group leader, together with Christine Escame, the head of media preparation, Carlos Ezeque, the head of sample processing and isolation, Paulo Sabio, the head of inventory and materials, and Jared Santos, the head of data analysis.
So our research focuses on extracting two species of endolychinic fungi from the lichen host and testing its antagonistic activity against the fungal pathogen Aspergillus niger. So the extraction of the ELF will be through the continuous subculture until a pure subculture is attained. So this will then be sent out for molecular identification in Macrogen, South Korea. So supplementary to this will be our morphological identification during subculturing based on published identification keys before testing its antagonistic activity against the fungal pathogen, where the intermingling of the ELF and the fungal pathogen will be monitored through SEM and subjected to t-tests. So our current progress is the sample collection on Kapangan Benguet and the continuous subculturing of the ELF, followed by the morphological analysis of our subcultures. And here are our next key steps, which is attaining the pure cultures, sending it out for molecular identification, and specifically identifying the species collected before testing its antagonistic activity against the fungal pathogen. So for our objectives, first is to collect and characterize and identify Parmotrema and Parmelia and isolate and identify DLF from its taline, which will then be compared for the antagonistic activities of the isolated ELF of both of our species against Aspergillus niger through inhibition percentage and independent t-tests. And lastly is to determine if the isolated ELF from Parmotrema and Parmelia possess secondary compounds that have antagonistic activity against the fungal pathogen.
For the work completed since last report, the first task or activity that we accomplished is media preparation, which was headed by all of the members. Followed by this, we have the inventory of materials and supply, which was completed September 1, 2025, spearheaded by Sabio Esteban and Ezequiel. Next, we proceeded with our sample collection or field work, which was completed September 4 to September 5 in Kapangan, Benguet, and all members were present during the day. Next, we have submitted our Gantt chart and line budget or updated Gantt chart and line budget on September 13, 2025, and we have maintained constant communication with our advisor starting from August 1 until now. And we also have submitted our fungi acquisition approval letters to UPLB for our culture request, which is for our test bacteria or test fungi rather, which was spearheaded by Escame and Santos. Our continual sample experimenting and processing is continually done by all the members as well.
Moving forward with the data collected by our group, as the head of data analysis, I was tasked with primarily organizing our data, morphologically characterizing our subcultures, and interpreting any patterns it may follow and any anomalies we may find. So before we could proceed to storing and organizing our data, we first had to develop a system that allows us to easily identify the subcultures in which parent plate they came from, while allowing us to simultaneously keep track of their progress. Hence, we created an accession code for each subculture, using various iterations of letters and numbers, each being a specific identifier for which lichen genus a subculture came from, which parent plate, which explant, and the generation of the subculture, allowing us to trace our latest subcultures all the way to its plate of origin. The primary software we use for data storage and organization is Google Sheets, an online spreadsheet software for computerized analogs, where we took note of the subculture's plate of origin, generation, color, the growth and texture of the mycelia, its elevation, margin, form, exudates, if it has any, and any other characteristics that we could further take note of. So next slide, please. So up until the recording of our presentation, we have a total of 254 subcultures tabulated in our online spreadsheet, comprising of 21 Parmotrema parent plates and 20 Parmelia parent plates, producing 118 Parmotrema subcultures and 105 Parmelia subcultures. Next slide, please. So here are some of the photos of our Parmotrema isolates. Each plate here are some of the photographs of cultures that we have and are labeled with their accession number and the date it was isolated from the plate which preceded it. So next slide, please. Here are some of the Parmelia isolates photographed. The Parmotrema genus produced 15 pure cultures, while the Parmelia genus produced 26 pure cultures, giving us a total of 41 pure cultures that we can use for our succeeding procedures in assessing their antagonistic against Aspergillus niger.
Moving on to challenges and solutions. First, we experienced unfavorable weather during the first schedule for fieldwork, which caused a delay in collection time but was resolved by rescheduling the fieldwork. Next is processing thesis samples. Scheduling conflicts among members posed a challenge. This was solved by assigning specific tasks, with 2 members focusing on isolation and 2 to 3 members handling morphology assessment and agar preparation. Lastly is contaminated plates. Contamination issues were encountered during the culture process preparation. The group addressed this by enforcing strict aseptic techniques to maintain culture purity.
Now for the Gantt chart, overall for our Gantt chart, it is subdivided into three, which is the thesis 1, thesis 2, and thesis 3. However, for the updated Gantt chart, we are more focused on the thesis 2 and thesis 3. Now for the thesis 2, which is the data collection and processing from the month of August to December, the allotted activities or activity for the month of August is processing of media, specifically the MEA. Now, for the month of September, it is allotted for the field work, at the same time processing and isolation of lichens in the laboratory. Now, for the October to the month of December, it is continuous processing and isolation of lichens in the laboratory. Additionally, sending out the pure samples of ELF in Macrogen South Korea for molecular identification and testing the antagonistic activity of it for the Aspergillus niger is allotted for the month of November to December. Now, for the thesis 3, which is the data analysis and thesis writing from the month of January to May. Now, for the month of January, it is allotted for the starting of draft of chapter 4. Now, for the month of Feb, which is the finalization of the draft, the chapter 4. At the same time, submission of the draft, revision, submission of revised copy, and starting of the draft of the budget list. Now, for the month of March, we have finalization of the budget list and drafting, submission of the draft, revision, submission of the revised copy of the chapter 5. Now, for the month of April, we have the submission of the chapter 5, revision of the manuscript, specifically the chapter 4 and chapter 5, then submission of the manuscript to the panelists and the mock defense. Now, for the month of May, we have the final defense, final revision, and submission of the hardbound copy.
Moving on to the current budget status of our group, the study remains financially stable despite initial constraints. The major expenses were minimized through in-kind support from a diagnostic laboratory, which provided essential laboratory materials,
such as petri dishes, reagents, inoculating loops, and other consumables. Only minimal personal expenses were incurred for transportation and minor materials, as well as fieldwork expenses. Overall, the budget is adequate and efficiently managed, allowing the continuation of the study without financial setbacks. Additional budget allocations for further thesis testing are currently being discussed to ensure sufficient resources for the next phase of the research.
For the next steps, so for the upcoming activities, we have the isolation of ELF peer cultures, and our target completion date is October to November. Then molecular identification, the target completion date is December. And lastly is the test for antagonistic activity of the two species against Aspergillus niger. Then the completion date for that is December.
Before moving on to the team reflection, we present here our individual reflection, which was submitted by all the members. In summary, our team reflection is a group is nothing without collaboration, communication, and teamwork. During the time frame of Thesis 2, the methodology of our study became the main focus of our work. Facing different challenges did not really become easy for us to quickly transverse through. Yet, the bond that we formed during trying times has helped us to remain as one, instilling proper communication and empathy to one another. We did not just get to know new people, we met better versions of ourselves as well throughout the process. We learned how impactful it is to step up in times of need when a group mate is feeling lost, and that made us stronger, knowing that we can depend on each and every one. Although we may find this course stressful and time consuming at times, at the end of the day, we also find ourselves laughing and enjoying the company while facing the adversities and challenges throughout our journey. We believe that aside from our determination, passion, and shared interest for our thesis topic, this aspect of friendship is also crucial in producing a well made research. Overall, our topic may not seem easy at first. We all had to learn new things and new methods for our laboratory work. It is inevitable for us to encounter several difficulties in performing and executing a thesis methodology. However, through the foundational skills and knowledge that we have honed throughout our almost 4 years in FEU, we were able to progress with our thesis within our expected and estimated time frame.
So here we have our permits that our group acquired prior to collection, such as the gratitude permit from the DNR office in Cordillera region, as well as the permit to transport the sample specimens before returning to the campus, acquired from Senra in Atok, Benguet. That would be all. Thank you.
Once again, this has been Group 10.